Everyone in the diner laughed at the old man eating alone, except the waitress who always smiled and brought him coffee for free. Until one morning, four men in suits and bodyguards entered. The bell above the diner door jingled like it always did, announcing another morning rush. But for Lily Parker, mornings weren't about customers, they were about one man. Every day, exactly at 7:30 a.m., a frail old man in a worn brown coat would walk in, leaning slightly on his wooden cane. His name was Walter Briggs, though most people just called him the forgetful guy. Lily was the only waitress who didn't roll her eyes when he showed up. She greeted him the same way every time. "Morning, Mr. Briggs. Usual black coffee?" He'd nod, sometimes smiling, sometimes lost in thought, staring at the empty booth across from him as if expecting someone who never came. Her coworkers often teased her. "Why do you waste your time on him, Lily? He never tips." Half the time, he doesn't even remember his order. But Lily just shrugged. Maybe he needs someone who remembers him. She wasn't rich, far from it. Her old car coughed more than it drove, and her rent was always due 3 days too early. But she believed kindness didn't need a receipt. So, even when she had bills piling up, she sometimes paid for his coffee herself, pretending it was on the house. The old man noticed, of course. He wasn't as lost as people thought. Sometimes he'd look at her with a soft smile that carried years of silence. "You remind me of someone," he'd say quietly. "My daughter." She used to care that way too. Lily never asked where she was. She didn't need to. The sadness in his eyes said enough. Still, the rest of the diner found humor in his presence. A group of young businessmen called him the antique. The cook joked that one day the man would fall asleep mid-sip and turn into a statue. Lily hated it. She hated how people measured worth in money, not in decency. But she stayed kind. Every morning she made sure his seat was clean, his cup was warm, and his dignity remained untouched, even when others rolled their eyes. And while the old man always thanked her before leaving, no one could have guessed that this simple ritual, this cup of coffee shared between two souls, was about to change her life forever. Because one morning the bell above that diner door would ring again. But it wouldn't be Walter Briggs walking in. It would be four men in dark suits, and they wouldn't be there for breakfast. The next morning felt wrong before the sun even came up. Lily woke to the sound of rain slapping against her window, the kind that made the world look tired and quiet. She hurried to work, late as usual, her umbrella barely holding back the storm. By the time she reached the diner, her shoes were soaked, and the smell of fresh pancakes mixed with wet pavement filled the air. At exactly 7:30 a.m., Lily looked up, waiting for the familiar jingle of the bell, the one that always followed with a soft, "Morning, dear." But it didn't come. Minutes passed. Then an hour. She kept glancing at the door, trying to shake the strange unease crawling up her spine. Maybe he just overslept, she thought. Or maybe the weather kept him home. Her coworker Denise noticed. "You waiting for Grandpa Forgetful again?" She teased. Lily forced a smile. "He's never missed a morning." Denise snorted. "Maybe he finally remembered he's got better places to eat." The laughter from the kitchen made her chest tighten. She busied herself wiping tables that didn't need wiping, refilling cups that were already full. Anything to keep from staring at that empty booth. By lunchtime, the booth still sat untouched, a clean plate, a folded napkin, and silence. The old man's absence hung heavier than the storm outside. Lily finally poured a cup of coffee anyway, placing it gently on his table. Denise frowned. "He's not coming, Lil." Lily whispered, "I know." "But what if he does?" "I don't want him to feel forgotten." Hours passed and customers came and went. But the booth remained the same, sacred somehow. Even the rowdy truck drivers who usually joked around fell quiet when they saw the untouched cup steaming softly in front of the empty seat. That night, Lily stayed late to close. The rain had stopped, but her heart hadn't. She looked at the clock, 10:14 p.m., and sighed. When she turned to grab her coat, something caught her eye. A small folded envelope was lying beneath the salt shaker. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside there was a napkin scribbled with shaky handwriting. "Thank you for remembering me when the world didn't. Walter." Her breath hitched. Tears blurred the words. She didn't know how long the note had been there, Maybe he'd left it days ago. Maybe just that morning, but she knew it meant goodbye. As she stood alone in the flickering diner lights, Lily whispered into the empty room, "I'll miss you, Mr. Briggs." But what she didn't know was that this wasn't the end of their story, because the very next morning, the diner door would swing open again, not with rain this time, but with men in black suits, polished shoes, and faces that meant business, and they weren't there for coffee. The morning after felt heavier than usual. The diner buzzed with chatter, the smell of bacon, the hiss of the grill, the clink of spoons against coffee cups. Yet somehow it all felt off. Lily tried to keep busy, but her eyes kept wandering to that empty booth by the window. The sunlight caught the spot where Walter's coffee cup usually sat, now replaced with a faint ring on the table. "Move on, girl," Denise muttered, flipping through her order pad. "Old people come and go." Lily bit her lip. "He wasn't just old, Denise. He was lonely." Denise sighed. "You can't fix everyone's loneliness with coffee?" Lily smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but it's a start." Just then the diner door swung open, but this time no bell jingled. It was pushed too firmly, too deliberately. Everyone turned. Two men in tailored black suits stepped inside, followed by two more wearing earpieces and dark sunglasses, bodyguards. Their presence felt out of place in a small town, diner where the most dangerous thing was usually an overcooked omelet. The air stilled. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the coffee machine stopped gurgling. Denise leaned closer, whispering, "What in the world?" But before she could finish, one of the suited men, tall, with neatly combed silver hair, stepped forward and looked around slowly. His voice was calm, deep, and commanding. "Excuse me," he said. "We're looking for a Miss Lily Parker." The sound of her name made her freeze. She looked up, confused. "That's me," she said softly, wiping her hands on her apron. "Is something wrong?" The man nodded once, then signaled one of his associates. A leather briefcase was placed on the counter. "I'm Richard Hayes," he said. "Senior legal representative of Mr. Walter Briggs?" Lily blinked. "Walter? You mean—" "Yes," he interrupted gently. "Mr. Briggs passed away 2 nights ago." The words felt like a punch to her stomach. The diner went silent. Even Denise stopped breathing. Richard continued. "Before his passing, he left specific instructions that upon his death, we were to find and meet you immediately." Lily's knees almost gave out. "Me? Why me?" The layer gave a faint smile. "That's what we're here to discuss." He gestured to one of the bodyguards, who handed her a sealed envelope, heavy, thick, and marked with an elegant wax seal embossed with the initials WB. "Mr. Briggs requested that you read this privately," Richard said. "But we'll need you to come with us after you do. There are formalities to complete." The other customers stared, whispering under their breath. Denise's mouth hung open. "Lily," she muttered, "what did you do?" Lily looked down at the envelope, her heart pounding. The wax shimmered in the morning light. For a moment she thought she could still hear his voice, soft, kind, and fading. She whispered under her breath, "What did you do, Mr. Briggs?" As she stepped outside with the lawyers and their silent guards, the diner door closed behind her. The lawyers led Lily to a black limousine parked outside the diner. The morning sun reflected off the tinted windows, turning everything around her surreal. She'd never been inside a car that clean, that quiet. The leather smelled of money and mystery. As the engine started, Richard Hayes sat across from her, briefcase still in his lap. "You can open it now," he said gently. "We'll give you privacy." Lily hesitated, her hands trembling as she broke the red wax seal. The envelope opened with a soft crack, releasing a faint smell of old paper and cologne, the same scent Walter always carried. Inside was a folded handwritten letter, the ink slightly faded, the handwriting shaky but neat. She took a deep breath and began to read. "My dear Lily, if you are reading this, it means I am finally where my daughter has been waiting for me. I'm not afraid anymore. You see, people stopped seeing me long before I left this world. But you didn't. You smiled when no one else did. You brought me coffee when everyone else brought me pity. You reminded me that I was still a man, not a memory. I know you think you were just doing your job, but to me you were giving me my dignity back, sip by sip, morning by morning. I lost my daughter in a car accident 15 years ago. Since then, I have lived in silence and guilt. She was your age when she died, kind, stubborn, too good for this world. You didn't know it, but every time you said, "Good morning, Mr. Briggs," it felt like she was still here. Tears blurred Lily's eyes. Her fingers brushed the edges of the paper as she continued. "Before I go, I wanted to do one last thing right. You gave me kindness without reason, so I want to return the favor. Even if I can't hand it to you myself, my lawyers will explain everything. Don't argue. Don't feel guilty. Just live." Walter Briggs. The car was silent except for Lily's shaky breathing. She pressed the letter to her chest, whispering, "Oh, Walter." Richard finally spoke. He wanted you to visit his home. There are personal effects and documents he wanted handed over directly. She wiped her tears. "I don't understand. I'm just a waitress." "Why would he—" "He was very clear," Richard interrupted softly. "He said, she treated me like a person. The rest treated me like a paycheck." Outside the window, the town passed by, small shops, quiet streets, the diner fading in the distance. She felt like she was leaving her old life behind, one unpaid bill and one cup of coffee at a time. After a long drive, the car turned down a winding road lined with oak trees. At the end stood a large iron gate, and beyond it, a mansion. Not a house, a mansion stretching across acres, surrounded by roses and silence. Lily gasped. "This can't be right." Richard nodded. "Mr. Briggs didn't just own this estate. He built it." The car stopped in front of the massive wooden doors. As they opened, the butler stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Welcome, Miss Parker." The sound of the mansion doors closing behind her echoed like a heartbeat. Lily followed the lawyers down a long marble hallway, her sneakers squeaking awkwardly against the polished floor. Oil paintings lined the walls, portraits of a younger Walter Briggs, standing beside a woman and a little girl with golden curls. The same eyes. The same smile. Lily stopped, breath catching in her throat. "That's her, isn't it?" Richard nodded. "His daughter, Amelia. She looks like—" Lily hesitated. "She looks like me." Richard's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. Yes, he noticed that too. They entered a study, warm, sunlit, filled with books that smelled like old stories. A large oak desk dominated the center, and behind it stood another man in a gray suit, Mr. Collins, the estate executor. He adjusted his glasses and smiled politely. "Miss Parker, thank you for coming. I believe Mr. Hayes briefed you?" Lily nodded slowly, clutching Walter's letter. "He said there were—" "Formalities." Collins opened a thick folder, revealing several neatly typed pages and an embossed document with a golden seal. "This," he said, "is Mr. Briggs's final will and testament." The words hung in the air like thunder. Lily blinked. "His will?" "Yes," Richard replied softly. "Mr. Briggs had no surviving family. His wife and daughter passed years ago. You were the only person he mentioned by name." The executor cleared his throat and began reading aloud. "To Lily Parker, the woman who showed me that compassion still exists in a world obsessed with wealth. I leave the remainder of my estate, including all liquid assets, properties, and business holdings. May she never again have to choose between kindness and survival." The room fell silent. Even the ticking clock seemed to pause. Lily stared blankly as if the words didn't belong to her. "That can't be right. He barely knew me. I'm just a waitress." Richard looked her in the eye. "You were more than that to him, Miss Parker. You were the only person who saw him." Her hands trembled. "But I can't take this. It's his life's work." Mr. Collins gave a soft smile. "And that, Miss Parker, is precisely why he chose you. Because you never asked for anything." Tears welled up again. She remembered how everyone laughed when she poured him free coffee, how they mocked her for feeding a ghost. Now, those same people would read about her in the papers. Waitress inherits billionaire's fortune. But in that moment, the money didn't matter. What mattered was the look on his face she remembered, that faint smile every morning, that quiet "thank you, dear." He wasn't repaying a favor. He was completing a circle. Collins closed the folder and stood. "We'll handle the paperwork." For now, I suggest you rest. It's a lot to process. Lily nodded faintly. Her heart was heavy and light all at once. As she looked out the mansion window, the sunset painted the sky in gold, the same gold that once shimmered in Walter's. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the marble floors of the Briggs mansion, but Lily barely noticed it. She hadn't slept much. The words, "You are the sole beneficiary," kept looping in her mind like a broken record. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Walter's face, kind, wrinkled, fading behind the steam of a coffee cup. Downstairs, the mansion staff moved quietly, their eyes filled with curiosity. They all knew. Everyone did. The story had already leaked to the local news. Waitress inherits billionaire's empire. Lily hated every word of it. She wasn't an empire. She was just someone who cared. As she stood by the window, sipping tea, something caught her eye. Movement near the gate. A man in a dark coat, standing by a black sedan, holding a phone to his ear. He wasn't dressed like a journalist. His posture was too rigid. Her chest tightened. She turned to the butler. "Do you know that man?" The butler frowned. "No, ma'am. He's been there since sunrise." "Shall I call security?" Before she could answer, the doorbell rang, loud, sharp, impatient. Moments later, Richard Hayes entered the study again, his expression serious. "Miss Parker, we may have a situation." Lily set her teacup down. "What kind of situation?" "There are people contesting the will," he said grimly. "Former business partners, distant relatives, people who vanished when Mr. Briggs needed them, but now they suddenly remember his name." Lily swallowed hard. "They think I don't deserve it." Richard gave a humorless smile. "They think they do." He opened his briefcase and placed a document on the desk. One of them, a man named Ethan Briggs, claims to be Walter's nephew. He's demanding a full audit and court hearing. "Ethan?" she repeated. "I never heard him mention any family." "Because he cut them off," Richard said. "They only came around when money was involved." Outside, the same man in the dark coat ended his call and walked slowly toward the mansion. The guards moved to block him, but he raised his hand calmly. "Tell Miss Parker that Walter's real family has arrived." The words echoed through the entry hall like poison. Within minutes, Lily found herself face to face with him. Tall, sharp-jawed, his expression somewhere between charm and menace. He extended a hand. "Ethan Briggs, my uncle spoke of you." "The waitress." Lily ignored his hand. "He never mentioned you." Ethan smirked. "Of course not." I reminded him of everything he hated: greed, control, legacy. "But I see he found a softer target." Richard stepped forward. "Mr. Briggs left everything to Miss Parker by his own will, legally notarized and witnessed. You have no claim." Ethan's eyes flashed. "We'll see about that. Money has a way of bending rules, and people—" He leaned in slightly toward Lily. "Enjoy your fairy tale while it lasts, sweetheart. Lawyers can't protect you forever." With that, he turned and left, his car tires crunching down the gravel drive. Lily stood frozen. By the end of the week, Lily Parker's quiet life had turned into a circus. News vans camped outside the Briggs estate like vultures waiting for a meal. Reporters shouted questions through the gates, their microphones thrust forward as if demanding confession. "Miss Parker, did you manipulate an elderly billionaire? Are you the waitress who scammed Mr. Briggs before his death? Is it true you convinced him to rewrite his will?" Each headline hit her like a slap. Waitress or gold digger? Mystery woman inherits fortune from Alzheimer's victim. Inside the mansion, Lily watched the chaos unfold on the TV, her face pale. She turned to Richard, who was pacing the room with a phone pressed to his ear. "Tell them to stop," she whispered. "I didn't do anything wrong." Richard covered the phone. "The world doesn't care about truth, Lily. They care about stories. And right now, you're the villain in theirs?" She sank onto the couch, gripping Walter's letter. "He wouldn't have wanted this." "No," Richard agreed softly. "But he knew it might happen. He said you'd be tested." Outside, a crowd of protesters had gathered, holding signs. "Justice for the Briggs family. Gold diggers, go home. No waitress billionaires." The irony burned. The same town that mocked her for giving. Walter Free Coffee now mocked her for inheriting his gratitude. Denise, her old co-worker, called one evening. "Lil, this is crazy." They showed your face on TV? The diner's packed. Everyone's talking about you. Lily laughed bitterly. They used to talk about my tips. Now they talk about my will. Are you okay? Denise asked. I don't know, she whispered. I did something kind. And somehow it became a crime. Meanwhile, Ethan Briggs wasn't sitting idle. His lawyers filed a petition claiming mental incompetence, alleging Walter wasn't of sound mind when he changed his will. They wanted the inheritance frozen. The battle lines were drawn. Court summons. Media attacks. Online harassment. Lily couldn't even step outside without a camera flashing in her face. One evening, as she sat in Walter's library, scrolling through a sea of hateful comments, she found a post from an anonymous user that stopped her cold. He always sat alone until she came. I was there every morning. She treated him like a father. Don't believe the lies. It was signed, a customer at Denny's, 7:30 a.m. Tears welled up. Somewhere out there, someone remembered. Someone saw what she did. Maybe kindness wasn't dead, just quieter than greed. Richard entered the room. Lily, the court date's been set. 3 days from now. Ethan's bringing top-tier attorneys from New York? She looked up, eyes fierce now. Then we'll bring something stronger. Stronger? He asked. Truth, she said, standing tall. And the kind of love money can't buy. Richard nodded slowly, a faint smile breaking through. Walter would have liked that. Outside, lightning split the sky, the storm breaking at last. The courthouse in downtown Chicago had never seen this kind of attention. Reporters crowded the marble steps, flashes firing like lightning every few seconds. Inside, whispers filled the air as the estate of Walter Briggs v. Lily Parker began. Lily sat at the defense table beside Richard Hayes. She wore a plain navy dress, simple, respectful, nothing that screamed billionaire across from her. Ethan Briggs sat in a tailored suit flanked by his lawyers, smiling like a man who already believed he'd won. Judge Morrison entered, his gavel striking once. Order in the court. The proceedings began with Ethan's attorney, a sharp woman named Miss Crowley. Her voice was smooth and venomous. Your Honor, she said, our client asserts that Walter Briggs was mentally unfit when he altered his will. The defendant, Miss Parker, manipulated a grieving old man for financial gain. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Cameras clicked. Lily's fingers tightened around the letter in her lap. Richard stood calmly. Objection, Your Honor. There is no evidence of manipulation. In fact, the only evidence we have is compassion, something that cannot be forged or faked. The judge nodded. Proceed, Mr. Hayes, but make it quick. Ethan smirked, leaning back in his chair. His attorney called their first witness, a former accountant of Walter's estate. Did Mr. Briggs ever discuss Miss Parker with you? Yes, the accountant said. He mentioned her often, but I found it suspicious. She came into his life so suddenly. Miss Crowley smiled. Exactly. Suddenly and right before he changed his will. Lily's stomach twisted. Every word felt like poison. When it was their turn, Richard stood. The defense calls Miss Lily Parker to the stand. Her heart pounded as she walked up. The courtroom lights felt hot against her face. Richard smiled reassuringly. Miss Parker, how did you meet Mr. Briggs? At the diner, she said softly. He came every morning at 7:30. Always ordered black coffee. Everyone else ignored him. I didn't. Why not? Because he looked like someone who needed to be seen. The courtroom grew still. Even Ethan stopped smirking. Richard nodded. Did he ever give you gifts? Money? Promises of inheritance? No, she said firmly. He just gave me stories. And gratitude. Miss Crowley rose for cross-examination. Miss Parker, you claim to have acted out of kindness, yet you benefited with millions. Isn't that convenient? Lily looked her straight in the eye. Kindness doesn't check price tags. A low murmur of approval spread through the gallery. Before Miss Crowley could respond, the courtroom doors opened suddenly. The bailiff frowned. Your Honor, there's someone requesting to testify. They say they have first-hand knowledge of Mr. Briggs and Miss Parker's relationship. The judge sighed. And who might that be? A woman stepped forward from the back of the courtroom, wearing a diner apron. Eyes. Ethan leaned toward his lawyer with a smirk that made Lily's stomach tighten. She could sense something coming, something cruel, rehearsed, dangerous. Miss Crowley rose again, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Your Honor, before we proceed to closing statements, the plaintiff has one final piece of evidence. Recorded statement allegedly made by Mr. Walter Briggs himself, 2 weeks before his death. Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed. Crowley pressed play on a small recorder. Walter's frail voice filled the air. I'm tired. Sometimes I forget things. People. But there's a girl at the diner. She reminds me of my daughter. Ethan smiled smugly. Sounds like confusion to me, Your Honor. He was clearly struggling mentally, but before the clip could end, Richard raised his hand. Play the rest. Crowley hesitated. There's nothing relevant beyond. Play the rest, Richard said firmly. The judge nodded. Continue the recording. The tape crackled. Walter's voice came back, softer but steady. People think I'm confused. Maybe I am, but I know what gratitude feels like. That girl, Lily, she makes me remember what love without expectation is. I'm not confused about her. She's the only thing I'm sure of. The courtroom froze. Even the reporters stopped typing. Ethan's smirk evaporated. Richard turned to the judge. I rest my case. The judge leaned forward, his tone sharp. Mr. Briggs clearly expressed sound emotional and moral judgment. That is not confusion. That is clarity born from peace. Ethan stood abruptly. He was manipulated. You can't trust a dying man's words. Richard's calm voice cut through the noise. Funny, you didn't care about his words when he was alive. Only now, when his silence pays someone else, you suddenly find your concern. The crowd murmured in agreement. Cameras flashed. Ethan's temper boiled. You think a waitress deserves what I built with my uncle's name? Lily finally stood. Her voice was steady, strong, the kind of quiet that commands attention. You didn't build anything. You waited for a man to die so you could take his money. I served him coffee so he could remember how to live. Applause erupted from the back rows before the bailiff banged his gavel for silence. The judge sighed, rubbing his temples. Enough. This court will take a short recess before my ruling. As everyone rose, Ethan shot Lily a glare sharp enough to cut glass. You'll regret this, he muttered. Lily met his gaze. The only thing I regret is that he still thought you might visit. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed like fireworks. Denise hugged her tightly. You killed it in there, Lil. Lily smiled weakly. I didn't kill anything. I just told the truth, but inside she was trembling. Because as she looked toward the exit, she saw someone unexpected standing quietly by the door, a gray-haired woman, holding a small box. The woman stepped forward. When the courtroom reconvened after recess, the air felt different, heavier. Expectant, like the calm before a storm, everyone knew this was the moment that would decide everything: money, legacy, reputation, and something far deeper, something you couldn't measure in dollars. Judge Morrison adjusted his glasses, his voice firm but calm. This court has reviewed all evidence, the recordings, witness statements, and Mr. Briggs's will. The question was not only about money, but intent. And intent, ladies and gentlemen, lives in the heart. He paused, glancing toward Lily, then at Ethan. Mr. Briggs was not manipulated. He was moved. By kindness, by humanity, by someone who asked for nothing but gave everything. The courtroom was silent. Then, the words everyone had been waiting for. The court upholds the validity of Walter Briggs's will. His estate lawfully belongs to Miss Lily Parker. The gavel struck once. The echo felt like thunder. For a moment, Lily didn't move. The world blurred. Denise grabbed her shoulders, whispering, You won, Lil. You did it. But Lily shook her head slowly. No, he did. He finally got the peace he wanted. Ethan exploded. This isn't over. I'll appeal. I'll take every cent she has. The bailiffs moved in before he could reach her. The judge's cold glare stopped him mid-step. You've taken enough, Mr. Briggs. Maybe it's time you learned how to give. Outside the courthouse, the world was waiting. Cameras flashing. Microphones in her face. Miss Parker. What will you do with the inheritance? Lily blinked against the flashes, then smiled softly. I'm reopening Benny's Diner, not as a restaurant, as a shelter. For anyone who feels invisible, the crowd gasped. Some reporters smiled genuinely for the first time that day. Weeks passed. The diner reopened with a new sign above the door. Walter's Table, where every seat is a second chance. People came, homeless veterans, tired nurses, lonely elders. They didn't come for coffee. They came to be seen. One morning, Lily poured a cup for an old man sitting by the window, just like before. He smiled and said, "You remind me of someone." Lily laughed softly. "I get that a lot." Above the counter hung the framed locket Walter left her, open for everyone to see. Next to it, a small plaque read, "Kindness is not charity. It's memory of who we are supposed to be." And every day, as the sun rose through the diner's front window, the light hit that locket just right, so that both photos shimmered as one. Epilogue: 1 year later, a black car pulled up in front of the diner. Inside, Ethan Briggs sat quietly, no lawyers, no cameras. He stared at the sign through the glass, Walter's Table. He didn't go inside. He just left a folded note by the door before driving away. Lily found it later that night. It said, "He was right. You did see him. Maybe one day I'll learn how."